Mature start by pole sitter Adam Cowell. He was reprimanded for that later on in the race, but that didn't affect him, holding on to pole position going through turn one, fending off Loris Spinelli and the new TF Sport Aston Martin coming debut this weekend. They decided that they were going to go.
Mikel Pitamba trying to make it a four-way scrap and profit off the back of it at the inside. Jordan Pepper continued to persevere after initial contact with Marin Angeli, but then we all saw the driver change periods come into play. Karel Bash swapped out in-step Marchand Jedlinski. He could not stop, though, the incoming onslaught from Anthony Bartone, who brought about a move heading through turn 3.
He then got his car stuck in the gravel track, and then we have more drama down at turn 5 with the Blau Motorsport car getting caught up down at turn 5. Then we had a move for third position, Menchaca getting down the inside on Simon Riker, running out a bit wide, but he did in fact manage to secure the position and completed the podium.
Reale Racing Team obviously not happy with that. Brad Ellis, a moment there with a 73 Kessel Racing Ferrari, missed everything, stalling on the middle of the circuit, no harm done, but Brad will bring the car home on their debut in the GT Open International Championship. Joe Osborne took
unfold, as we saw as well after the battle with the AKM by Antonelli Motorsport car driven by the boss being clouted out of the way by the Baporo Motorsport team, who then came a cropper in the pit lane as well. Incidents for the leading drivers as well with the GT Cup car. That put them on the back foot. And then the 47 was losing positions left, right and centre after Loris Spinelli came in
for a spot on the podium, but it was Marcos Seibert and Diego Mancheca who came out on top after the pit stop phase and held on to that lead. It wasn't all plain sailing, because we had this moment here for Stefan Aust in the Racing 1 Ferrari 488, and seemingly late problems for Patrick Cole. And then we had Polcini making his way through on Hash as well. That was really the action spot of the race. Anthony Bartone led for a while until the safety car, because of this moment initially contact with Charles Bateman and Hack.
The moment that Charlie Eastwood would hand over to Sally Hewlett. Fighting continued though in the second half of the race, eventful as it always is. Unfortunately, Sally Hewlett, though very short into his stint, would be tagged round by Bart Barrage, and then we had the barriers exploded, and that would bring out the safety car. When we got going, the number
off the line. It was later judged though, but it was maybe slightly too good. He jumped the gun, and a 10-second penalty was the result. Everyone cleanly through the first couple of corners of the lap, and Polcini set about building a huge advantage. We then saw a rather peculiar spin for the Olymp Racing Audi.
A very good restart from our top three. A back marker caused Ramos to be delayed, and further troubles for him. He would run wide at the start of the restart and lose 3 more positions. One of the moves of the race, Joe Osborne diving down the inside there of Fabrizio Castani, and would do many more on his route to the win. This was the second of
Pitamba. Eventually, there we see Fag getting around the outside, Haase in third place. There's a couple of cars, including our race-winning car, had to skip over the curbs at the first corner. Diego Menchaca found himself in a bit of a scuffle with James Wallace in the early stages of the race. The first few laps not going quite according to plan for the Motorpark team, having to come up the order from 12th on the grid as James Wallace found himself in the gravel.
Who managed to take Joe Osborne, but Osborne very quickly retaliated. Look at this, up the around the outside, gave him the inside for turn 2, and that is the definitive moment of the race for Osborne to get past Fuminelli in that fashion. Also got around the 73 car of Roman Zamian, who had to be on the defensive. Nick just lost the rear of the Porsche and sent both he and Adam Christodoulou into a spin, sending Christodoulou into early race retirement. Giardoni and Van Berlo continued on in what was second on the road, but with a penalty they would unfortunately eventually be put down to third. A late safety car for the 39 car again in the race. Chadaroglu took over the 133 car and the overall lead as a result, but Nick Moss soon dispatched him for the race lead. Then this was a bit of an inter-team scrap. Glenn Van Berlo getting his way past Ben Jahites to take what would eventually be second overall, and then unfortunately Hites getting into Murat Chadaroglu, and a little bit of contact
around that McLaren. and ended up doing a really good job of doing so. But it was Eddie Cheever, the man on the move in that stage, got himself up into 3rd place and ended up challenging Chauvet for 2nd, while Charlie Fagg built up a nice healthy margin. This was that battle for 2nd place that also included the Pro-Am lead battle as well. Eddie Cheever getting right round the outside, Carol Bash following him.
Stop him from going through out of Estante would pull a gap. Meanwhile, with all the overtaking going on behind. Pit stops then happened in the race. This was the moment Vincent Abriel got in the car. He had an 18-second gap to chase to Miguel Ramos. Eastwood was fighting with Yannick Mettler. Eventually, he would get through and go into 6th and eventually take the win. He continued to pick off people, though. It wasn't an easy run for him. That was when he got past Master.
Certainly a calamity of sorts. Almanor Racing, unfortunately, coming unstuck. Albert Costa right in the fight as well. Unfortunately, well, he managed to dodge and weave between that of Charlie Fagg in the very early stages, but the car's getting collected in the early stage would see, of course, the Optimum Motorsport McLaren out of the race at the very beginning. We saw some types as well. Albert Costa trying to charge his way through the field after losing places early on. Unfortunately, then being slapped with a 5-second time penalty after the collision with Andrea.
Zamian sent Zamian into a spin, and Pierberg gained the penalty for his car as a result of that. Korzanowski, the AM-class runner, was running very high up the order in the early stages in the overall top 10. Fran Rueda getting together with Korzanowski and getting through.
Team car and consolidate that performance. Certainly here as well, we saw the Oregon car coming unstuck through the Roggia, tangling up with James Wallace. Pietro Pirolini getting onto the grass, spinning the car, and unfortunately it ended up in the barrier. But it would.
Lining up into turn 3, and if you look to your left-hand side, you'll see the Team Bentley car having a little look down to first, and then further back, we see in front of us here a big collision between Christian Clean, the JP Motorsport car, and Dominic Schwabel. Both drivers out of the race, both drivers okay, crucially. We then got going again post-safety car, and it was Jordan Pepper all over.
3rd place in the early stages of the race. This was Abriel, Louis Pret, making his way through into 4th place at the start as they made their way up Eau Rouge for the first time and onto the Camel Straight. Brilliant racing in GT Cup Open.
Title, but the one more place was needed to put him ahead. They were tied on points in the end, and Fabian Schiller doing his best to take the lead. It was a very aggressive move for 2nd place, tried to take the lead at the same time as well with only a lap to go. But Mikhail Bitamba soaked up the pressure beautifully and took the victory.
It was brilliant racing. Honda on their return to the GT Open International Championship with the 2 Chinese debutants. They were running in a strong 14th place until that moment right there. Yannick Mettler heading over to Dexter Muller. Axel Jeffries drove superbly, as ever did the Zimbabwean. The 2 Oregon cars coming together, and this was the moment. Bang! When the 777 car of Stanislav,
the JP Motorsport Mercedes and the number 17 Ferrari, which allowed Joe Osborne on the inside, but he got a big squeeze by the 88 of Christian Clean, had to back out to the move. There was contact made as Alexei Nesov muscled his way up the order ahead of Marcello Hahn in the McLaren, and Nesov would find himself in the AM-class lead before much longer. The battle out in front was very tight indeed. Eastwood would not let Enrique Chavez through without a fight.
Oglu took over the 133 Ferrari from David Fuminelli, who did a sterling job to lead for the first part of this race. Ultimately, the Turk would finish in P6, but he was picked off by Gilardoni, Pulcini, Adam Christodoulou. This was controversial. Audi was on the chart. He was by the McLaren, and pretty soon on, it was an Audi 1-2. And Leonardo Pulcini. Leonardo taking the wheel initially, and then Max Hoffa reeled in Carol Bash from 1.9 seconds back and took the lead. The Audi's trading position.
Took the wheel of the number 9, and once Laurent Demise took over from Jamie Stanley, unfortunately a spin soon followed. That was Adam Christodoulou going past and into the Pro-Am lead that he would never give up. The 19 car picking through the order. Glenn Van Berlo had a brilliant final stint of the race here to end up 3rd overall. And this was the move for the lead. Nick Moss.
Inception Racing. Agostini and Ferrari in this wild card entry. The one-off race for the Audi Sport Italian. They were quick, but they had another unscheduled pit stop later on in the race. Andy Suchak and
this event, but rather because of strategies on the safety car. Perfect spinning here from two Porsche Cup cars after contact into the final corner. The Volcano car ended up coming away with the win regardless. Contact further down amongst the Cup cars and some of the GT3 cars, but this was the battle.
The pole sitter led the field down into turn one. And would pull away from the rest of the field. He drove superbly in the opening stint. As the second McLaren went wheel to wheel.
Would also make moves past the of course of Ferrari, but of course would eventually slip up on the escape out of turn 3, hitting the barrier on the left-hand side as we're looking at it on screen, with damage clearly visible to the front left of the car. Eventually we would have a dramatic finale with Michael Pitamba, who had led all the way from start to finish. Unfortunately, his car would slip up.
Joe Osborne, who would put in the drive of his life from grid 21 to go up inside the top 10, the top 5, ultimately finishing in 4th. Pulcini and Hites a slightly longer pit stop. They just had to stay within sight